All right, g'day, hi, and welcome. All right, there's my trusty, rusty, dusty SM58, and we're going to talk about why the SM58 sucks, and that's why everybody loves it. Okay, well, first off, it doesn't really suck. It's just it has limitations. Now, one thing a lot of people probably going to comment on the rust on there, but this is the testament of this mic. Again, let's have a look at it. I mean, this thing, okay, I'll be honest with you, I haven't played with it live that much, but you can tell I've used this quite a lot since 2003. And this is the typical story you get with the SM58. Same with the SM57, which I also have. Is they're built like tanks. Like I talked about yesterday's video. I think it was my drummer, my bass player, anyway, stepped on the previous one I had, and they did a Scooby-Doo and nearly killed themselves, and the mic was fine. I don't know why it was on the floor in the first place, but it was on the stage floor, and they just nearly wiped out on it. I seen a guy dunk one in beer overnight, and he plugged it in the next day, and it still worked. I'm not recommending you do that, but it gives you an idea of how these things are built. They're pretty robust, right? They're built like tanks. And almost everybody that shows you their SM58 that they've had, you know, they all look like this. And in fact, this one looks pretty good in comparison to a lot of them you see that are all chipped and dented and everything like that. So these things get beat up like you wouldn't believe. They get no respect. They get hated on. They get, absolutely. But, when you have to depend on something, this is the mic that people typically depend on. And it is the world's most popular microphone. And a lot of it is just because, it's got the reputation and it's lived up to its reputation of what it is. But why does it suck? What parts about it sucks? Well, there is things, it has limitations. One of its main attributes is its biggest flaw. And that is it picks up everything. And when I say everything, it picks up everything. It's one of those mics that has a big problem with proximity. So when you're singing like back here, you're really thinned out. You get up here and it's muddy and it's boomy and everything. It overcompensates for what it's not a balanced mic. It just picks up everything. So the cardioid pattern that it has is meant to mainly grab everything here, but you can sing at this thing from the sides a little bit. It's pretty forgiving. It's a good pattern here to sing into it. So, if you're singing off axis a little bit, it'll pick it up. But the idea is not to get hardly any volume back here or on the sides, so that the noise bleed doesn't go into it, right? And what that is, like I say, it's your bass player's bass amp resonating through the mic stand. It tries to limit that as much as possible before it feeds back. The drum signals, the drums themselves, other loud guitars on the stage, whatever's making noise on the stage, it tries to kind of keep it away so that it picks up you right here rather than everything back there. But that said, it still picks up everything. So in its price range, with just the research I've done, did a lot of research on it last night before the making of the video. You see, like everything in the same rough price range is pretty much the same. Like there's really, it doesn't matter what brand you go with at this price range. They're all pretty much going to be, some might be a little bit brighter or a little bit fuller sounding, but there's nothing that's going to be like, oh wow, that's so much better than this. They're all built to about the same. It's just this has a reputation that when you buy this, it will still work when it's rusty. It will still work after you've dropped it a few times most of the, it takes a lot to damage these things, right? They're the AK-47 of microphones. Sort of running them over by a tank, they'll still work. And even then, they might still work. The thing about this mic is when you get on really loud stages, like this mic is perfect for, let's say the guy that plays like, say, bluegrass, and he's playing through like, say, like an outdoor gig once in a while, not really into it for the money, just, having fun. And, there's never a distorted guitar around. He's got a jazz drummer that, is not tone deaf, whatever. And, they don't play super, super loud. Well, this mic is probably all the mic you'll ever need, right? Get into the rock guys, well, we tend to have more distorted, loud guitars, a lot more low end frequencies bouncing around the stage, heavier bass. Heavy, we have tone deaf drummers that tend to pound the shit out of the drums, creating a lot of percussive sounds and vibrations through the floor coming up into the mics. So once you start getting up to higher volumes, that's when you find the limitations of this mic. Now, there's other things that could be used to help keep the vibration and stuff like that, and the mics from screaming and howling on stage. There is limit, but there is things products you can use, but there's limitations to that too. Like you can only EQ out so much low end before you get like really high frequency screeching, right? So there's the balance. And with the SM58, what I've always found is the louder you go, the more you have to bleed off, obviously on the low end. But then the high end just becomes microphonic. So you have to bleed that off, which creates more low end again, right? So you start taking off the high end. Now you got a dull sounding mic. There is always a sweet spot where it will sound good. And it's not really about, one thing about the SM57, it's not a bad sounding mic. But with if I'm going to say it right, principles, basically your like P's and your K's and your D's, stuff like that, high pressure sounds that peak the mic, it's really bad for that. Like it doesn't take much. The mics, like I say, it picks up too much. So I seem to, from the research I've found, that to spend money on another mic to replace this as a live mic, the next best thing was the Shure SM or KSM8, which is about a $500 mic, $600 mic. And that was about the only thing that would have been worthwhile really buying to replace this if you were going to go up a notch. And then after that, you can go up a notch or two from there. And what the KSM8 is everything this isn't. You know what I mean? Like it will deal with the high end volume and stay clear. It doesn't have the proximity problem where it just gets really bassy and dark when you get up close to it. And there's a lot of interesting features on that mic. But sound-wise, one's just about as clear as the other. There's not a lot of difference there. It's just how it performs. That's the limitations of the SM58, is that you will always have to deal with the proximity flaw of it, where it just, better quality mics, that's what you're not going to be really paying for which mic sounds better, but which mic is easier to tame. If you look at it that way, that might be a better way to look at it. Whereas if you get really loud and you got like the KSM8 or the KSM9s, those things are, cardioid and supercardioid. So the supercardioid is just going to pick up what's here, so it's not going to pick up the drums or the bass or whatever. It's not going to pick up the 60 cycle hum in the ceiling fan like this thing will. You know what I mean? Like this thing picks up everything. It really does. Which is one of its main attributes, is that, you can have 6 people singing on it at once and you'll pick them all up fairly well if they're close enough, pretty much going to be cheek to cheek, but you get the idea, you know what I mean? Like a couple of people could sing in it at once. Where some of the other mics might be a little bit more limited, but they're a lot clearer. And they don't feed back. You can put a lot more gain on them before they feed back, and that's the problem with this thing. You can't put a lot of gain on it before it feeds back. You really have to be. It makes a sound guy have to work harder, I'm sure. But these things are everywhere, so people know how to deal with them. And I've had this mic, and other SM58s that I've sang through over the years on stages, up fairly loud and sound pretty good. So you can get quite a bit of volume out of this, which then comes down to what do you upgrade to when this thing can do the job up to a pretty acceptable volume? And, I play loud, I got the Kongzilla amp right beside me, that thing's loud. right? So if that thing is, if that big Kongzilla amp is behind me while this thing's in front of me, you know, it does make it harder to tame this because you just got all that wall of sound just smashing into it, right? And all that low end. So, like I say, when you're looking to upgrade your microphone, don't go out and buy 10 different microphones. Like some people do it just because it's, a hobby or whatever. But if you're trying to just, maximize bang for the buck, a lot of people start at this because it's just a great starting point. It really is. And there's some people, like, they'll learn the limitations of it really quickly in side by side comparisons. And the nice thing now is, like I say, years ago when I bought this in 2003, you really couldn't get, you'd get like a write up of what mic did what and the frequency responses and stuff like that. But it wasn't real world. You couldn't, you'd have to try one on stage to know, what was better and what wasn't. And a lot of people don't like to gamble, right? They're just like, well, I know this works, right? And everybody else has one, so, whatever. And the problem is with that everybody else has one is that it gives the illusion that that's the best thing on the market, right? And it's not the case. It's not the worst thing on the market, but it's not the best. So let's say you can only buy one microphone, but your budget was a little bit higher, say like up to $600. Well, I would never buy this. I would buy the KSM8 over this any day if, there would be no reason to buy this. Any other mic in this price range, okay?